Our next speaker is going to take, hopefully, what we've heard and put it into the context of what could go wrong. Because yesterday we heard how the European Union is an economic basket case, or I'm paraphrasing, but I think that I'm not too far from the truth. Richard Greninger, for the vice chairman of BOMA USA, is going to take the economic situation and give it a US spin, where we have, of course, the fiscal cliff, the sequester, the debt ceiling, and an administration that seemingly is beset by scandals as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's cross the Atlantic for Richard Greninger.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us. Prior to arriving here in Sun City on Tuesday, my lovely wife and I spent 2.5 wonderful days in Cape Town, touring the city and enjoying your fabulous Pinotage wines in the mountains of the Cape wine country. Our guide was quite the historian, and he shared with us the influence of the early Dutch, English, French settlers and the issues surrounding apartheid and the many choices your countrymen made in forming a new constitution here in the early to mid-90s. What you will hear from me this morning is that the U.S. has many choices to make as well. And so I wanted to start off with a quick little, what I think is a cute story about how important choice is. And it takes place in a retirement home near my home outside of Washington, D.C., at a place called Leisure World, where 3 octogenarian widowers had grown to enjoy each other's company and play golf, play cards, just do almost everything together. And on the occasion of the one gentleman, Max's 90th birthday, his buddies decided to give him the most fabulous gift of his life. They were Leo and Sam. And so Leo and Sam sent this gift over to Max on Saturday morning, the day of his birthday. He hears a knock on the door. He opens the door, and this beautiful blonde is standing there in a trench coat. And she says to him as he opens the door, "I'm here on behalf of your friends, Sam and Leo, to give you super sex." And he takes one look at her as she opens up the trench coat and this gorgeous teddy. She's in this gorgeous teddy, and he said, "Honey, I better take the soup because I think the sex would kill me." So it's important that we all try to make the best decisions we can. So first, let me start by saying happy 45th anniversary in producing another insightful convention of the South African Property Owners Association. It's quite an achievement to serve with excellence for such a long, long period of time, and my sincere congratulations on your success in doing so. We have been exchanging at BOMA, we've been exchanging information and working closely with our good friends and colleagues at SAPOA now for several years. Everything from standards to conference education to the soon-be-released global tenant study that you will hear more about in the next session on global office market trends. I'm so appreciative to Dr. Mozanicki and Neil Gopal and Estienne de Klerk for inviting us to this terrific conference. They are exceptional leaders, and this conference is always a great venue for business networking and education, and we're just thrilled to be back. The Building Owners and Managers Association International is a federation of 93 BOMA U.S. associations in most all of the major metropolitan areas. BOMA Canada and its 11 regional associations, and 12 BOMA international affiliates in these countries: Australia, Brazil, China, Finland, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Mexico, New Zealand, the Philippines, United Kingdom, and of course, South Africa. BOMA International has represented the commercial real estate industry for more than 100 years. It was founded in 1907 to develop standards and protocols for operating a new phenomena called the skyscraper. BOMA represents the owners and managers of all commercial property types, including nearly 10 million square feet of U.S. office space. BOMA's mission is to advance the interests of the entire commercial real estate industry through advocacy, education, research, standards, and information. Our roots were firmly established around creating the tools to allow the performance benchmarking and the pursuit of best practices. That 10 billion square feet of office space that BOMA represents in the U.S. alone is far-reaching from an economic perspective. We released an economic impact study a year ago that shows the breadth of our outreach. BOMA's total office marketplace is $205 billion, with $80 billion in total annual property expenditures. It represents 3.8 million jobs, of which 2.2 are direct real estate jobs in the properties, and 1.6 million other jobs created by real estate's presence. This represents 10 billion square feet of office space located in 93 markets, housing, and this is the most important number, 44.3 million office jobs and 44.3 customers of all of us at BOMA in the United States. Commercial real estate has a tremendous impact on the U.S. economy. BOMA members are very concerned and watchful about what's going on in Congress because it impacts their day-to-day business in areas of taxes, capital gains, and energy efficiency, just to name a few. Because of this, advocacy is one of the most public of our goal areas and one that can make a huge difference to the bottom line of all BOMA members. Recent events have made this goal area a bit more challenging, and here's some background. The 2012 presidential election was, as we know, very close. President Obama won the popular vote 50 to 49%. The election did not settle anything. If anything, it cemented the ideological battles between our parties. In the congressional elections, Democrats picked up 2 additional Senate seats, and in the House, the 242 to 193 Republican majority was cut down to 234 to 201. Our system of government was set up with checks and balances to minimize change. But one trend worth noting that doesn't bode well for forging a true spirit of compromise is that several of the newly elected legislators line up either on the far right or on the far left of their parties, having ousted or otherwise replaced moderates for both parties. The bottom line, the elections resulted in an even more divided Congress. Not a great outcome if you're looking to forge compromise. So legislators in Washington are growing more dysfunctional each day. Partisan fights are dominating sound policy, winning control of Congress in the next election and the next takes priority over finding meaningful solutions to today's issues, and personal power trumps consensus. It used to be that there was an expectation of decorum in Congress. America's founding fathers always envisioned that legislators would want to work toward compromise. In the past, legislators would broker deals that were a win-win. Now, each party wants to win and make the other party lose. So what has changed is lawmakers do not make decisions, and it has impacted business. Born out of the spirit of no compromise, with the White House and the Congress were two words that the American public has heard ad nauseum: fiscal cliff and sequestration. And that's all about lowering our debt, which is massive. It's 16 trillion. In fact, that's higher than the entire US economy of 15.5 trillion. Never a good thing when your debt is larger than your economy. Sequesters are across-the-board spending cuts. Sequesters were first devised in 1985 to enforce limits on discretionary spending and deficits. As our debt ceiling continued to go up, President Obama revived the sequester in 2011 to help reduce U.S. debt. It was passed as part of the Budget Control Act of 2011, better known as the Debt Ceiling Compromise. The goal of this act was to find compromise among a committee of legislators to cut $1.2 trillion from the debt over a 10-year period of time. If the committee had done so and the Congress had passed it by December 23rd of 2011, then a sequester would have been averted. That didn't happen. And so that brings us to the fiscal cliff, which is a term used to describe the challenge before the U.S. government to meet the terms of the Budget Control Act of 2011 before December of 2012. And by doing so, avoid the automatic sequester spending cuts. They had a year to pass measures to help reduce the growing deficit of the $1.2 trillion over 10 years. A resolution was not reached in the Senate until 3 hours before the January 1st deadline, and wasn't approved in the House until the next day. Just a few of the issues that Congress was trying to resolve by the fiscal deadline included expiring tax cuts, tax extenders, sequestration, health care, and debt ceiling. And the most significant impact of the fiscal cliff outcome, also known now as the American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012, was that payroll taxes increased, and there was a reversal of President Bush-era tax cuts for individuals making more than $400,000. So we're still hanging on. So the U.S. government reached a deal in the waning hours. We didn't go over the fiscal cliff. The Congress reached a historic, heartwarming compromise. Not exactly. The fiscal cliff deal did not address the full $1.2 trillion debt ceiling compromise. So bring on sequestration, which requires a reduction of $1.2 trillion in spending cuts over the next 10 years. Because Congress was not able to find a solution on how to find those spending cuts, automatic spending kicked in on March 1st. The automatic spending cuts for 2013 sequester included $42.7 billion in defense cuts, a 9.4% overall cut there, $28.7 billion in domestic discretionary cuts, or 8.2%, $9.9 billion in Medicare cuts, a 2% cut, and $4 billion in other mandatory cuts, a 7.6% cut to non-defense programs, and a 10% cut to mandatory defense programs. So those total approximately $85 billion, and that's because our fiscal year ends in September, so this really was a time frame from March to end of September. The numbers will be greater in the out years. The U.S. states being hit the hardest with sequestration include Virginia, California, and Texas, Washington, D.C., and Maryland, where the U.S. government and defense industry contractors represent a large sector of the job market. In all, 700,000 federal workers are being furloughed, having to take forced day off without pay for several days to save money between now and the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. And that's been moderated a bit. That's the photo of the U.S. Chair of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke. He's had a lot to worry about these last 6 years or so with the Great Recession in the U.S. and across the globe and the slow recovery we've experienced the last couple of years. With the sequestration spending cuts, Bernanke and others are now quite concerned about the impact on jobs and gross domestic product. In the U.S., Bernanke predicts sequestration could impact GDP by 1 to 2% and jobs by 0.8%. GDP is ticking up slowly, but sequestration could slow that even more. In 2011, we had a 1.8% growth rate. 2012, 2.2. It was projected to be upwards of 4, but with sequestration, a 2% projected through 2013, and then jumping up to 2.9 is the estimation for 2014. Pretty weak. Unemployment right now is 7.5%, and that's an improvement over the 10% we were at in 2009, but the improvement has been slow. And also, people are being hired at lower wages than before. So we've got a great deal of underemployed people in the U.S. that clouds that 7.5% in my mind. The construction pipeline for public buildings is also affected by sequestration. According to the Associated General Contractors of America, the sequestration could mean a $4 billion plus reduction this year in federal construction spending. The effects of sequestration go even deeper with many of BOMA's core advocacy issues in the line of fire. The fiscal cliff bill had an immediate impact on commercial real estate. The bill extended President Bush-era income and other tax cuts for taxable income up to $400,000 for individuals and $450,000 for couples, but allows tax rates to rise from 35 to 39.6% on income levels above those. This is not a complete victory because the tax rate did not go up on higher income earners. But we were able to push that income number up from the proposed $250,000 to $400,000, creating many fewer people to be affected. And based on this compromise, the conservative Republican Congress feels as though they have done their part in cooperating, and now it's all on Obama to show the expense cuts and to reform taxes. Of importance to BOMA priority issues, the bill altered tax rates on capital gains. Tax rates on capital gains and dividends on those with income over 400 to 450 increased to 20%, while those with income below 400 to 450 remained at the 15% level. In addition, the bill extends the package of tax extenders, which included the 15-year time frame for depreciating leasehold improvements for taxable years 2012 to 2013. But it has to be renewed again if it's going to continue. This is an important issue for BOMA members because it reduces the rate of depreciation of tenant improvements from what was, in the early years, 39 years to 15 years, which is more in line with market realities. And we continue to fight that issue every single day. not specifically related to sequestration, but a tax issue of importance to BOMA and many people in this room, is the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act, or FIRPTA. Established in 1980, FIRPTA requires withholding the estimated amount of taxes which may be due on the gain of disposition or sale of U.S. real property interest from foreign persons. Simply put, foreign investors don't pay tax on gains from other U.S. investments, like stocks and bonds, but they do pay taxes on gains realized on real estate. Reforming FIRPTA would be like getting rid of a tariff and could attract many more foreign investors. Where does it stand now? The president recently proposed changes to FIRPTA aimed at enhancing the attractiveness of investment in U.S. infrastructure and real estate to a broader universe of private investors, and we at BOMA hope he succeeds. This was never a concern for us, but we just took on a partner to expand our capital base, which is international institutions. So all of a sudden, this is a real big deal to us in my firm in Washington, D.C. The next issue is carried interest. And carried interest is a share of profits that the general partner typically receives when a piece of real estate property is sold, despite not contributing any initial funds. This seeks to motivate the general partner to work toward improving the property's performance. Think of carried interest this way. One entity, the general partner, has the expertise to remodel and manage a building but lacks the capital. They enter in a partnership deal with another entity, a limited partner, for financing. When the building is sold, the limited partner is given a rate of return preferred for their investment, and the general partner receives a carry, which is taxed at the lower capital gains rate, providing them with the incentive to take the risk. Current law taxes that carry at the capital gains rates, which we talked about as being 15%. Past proposals in the current bill, S-268, seek to tax the carry at ordinary income tax rates, which is much higher. We're talking about taking a tax from 15 to 40%. This would be a huge blow to the commercial real estate market. It would eliminate the reward for risk that prompts entrepreneurs to invest, resulting in fewer deals being done. An important point to remember about carried interest is that if it does pass, it could be retroactive, meaning deals made 3 years ago may be in play for this higher taxation. So all this takes us to one of the most potentially important measures to come out of sequestration, tax reform. And as the slide indicates, this one could go either way for commercial real estate. Tax reform is the overarching issue on Congress's agenda. This is of particular importance to BOMA members because when Congress passed tax reform in 1986, it had a negative impact on commercial real estate, particularly in the treatment of depreciation and capital gains. Our industry currently pays 70% of local taxes in the U.S., and we don't have the deep pockets that everybody thinks we have. The result, after that 86 tax reform, was that returns and values took a serious dip in the marketplace. So this time we want to make sure they get the tax reform right. We hope reform opens up a healthier business environment by lowering tax rates, making permanent the 15-year depreciation period for leasehold depreciation, and creating more incentives to drive energy efficiency. This would not just do wonders for commercial real estate, but for the entire economy. So there's that guy again, still hanging on. So when will this cliffhanger end? We don't know. It is important to remember that democracy can be messy. As I discussed earlier, the U.S. government is set up so that one side or party never has too much control, which has worked well for us over the past 200 years. But occasionally, you have to slog through partisan quagmires. And right now, we have fewer moderates in Congress and little room for compromise. We have on the far right our Tea Party. We have on our far left social liberals. And they have displaced many of the moderates that moved our legislature forward in the past. What we do know is that this lack of leadership is impacting the business environment. The good news is that even if the government can't get its act together, BOMA members are. Real estate firms are getting smarter, more creative, and more efficient. And building performance has actually improved. A recent study by the Kingsley Associates shows that office tenants reached new heights of satisfaction in 2012. In fact, nearly 9 out of every 10 office tenants in the United States were satisfied with their space in 2012. BOMA members are finding ways to make the best of a challenging marketplace by focusing on offering exceptional building operations and management. Let me share just a few of those for you so you have an idea of what we're focusing on in the States. BOMA's international roots were firmly established around creating the tools to allow for performance benchmarking, which it's been doing since we first launched our experience and exchange report, benchmarking report in 1920. This EER report is the leading U.S. benchmarking report measuring income and expenses for commercial buildings. Today, our EER report represents nearly 1 billion square feet of office space. The tools and knowledge we provide to our members helps them be creative, create value, and drive business. Some important elements in this value proposition have been our energy efficiency and sustainability initiatives. BOMA International is a 6-time U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Energy Star winner. It has won EPA's Climate Protection Award. Created BOMA Stars, a program that encouraged and influenced its members to 3,400 buildings were being benchmarked on the Energy Star program, representing 861 million square feet. We challenged our members through our successful 7-point challenge to reduce energy consumption by 30% or more, which we had great success with. And I'm pleased to say that our company, Carr Properties, was one of 17 firms in the country that met all 7 challenge points. BOMA Energy Efficiency Program, which is called BEEP, was a webinar-based program that trained in energy efficiency over 14,000 class members. And a green lease that we put together is among the industry's first and best green lease guides. And energy performance contracting. BOMA was ahead of the curve on developing energy performance contracting models, and one very similar to the one used in the Empire State Building. Driving up high performance hits across all areas. We're helping our members differentiate their buildings in a tight marketplace through exceptional operations and management. Our BOMA 360 performance program has been key to this. BOMA 360 is comprehensive and measures best practices across several key areas: operations and management, security, life safety, training, education, energy, sustainability, and tenant relations. Nearly 600 buildings have been designated across 57 markets. That same Kingsley study in June found that BOMA 360 buildings have higher tenant satisfaction scores in 52 out of 54 categories compared with buildings without the designation. Categories include value for rent paid, security, indoor air quality, building amenities, and overall satisfaction. CoStar, our information multiple listing service for commercial buildings in the U.S., states that BOMA 360 and our TOBY program buildings have a higher rate of tenant retention, and we're able to regain tenants more quickly in the wake of the economic downturn than any other Class A office buildings. The best practices that have come out of BOMA 360 is one of the reasons our members have been able to drive down costs and run their buildings more efficiently since the recession. BOMA has been creating floor measurement standards for the industry even longer than we have provided performance benchmarking. We released our first office standard in 1915, and today we have standards in 6 property types, including industrial, gross area, retail, multiple tenant, residential, and mixed use to join our office sector. Our office floor measurement standard is used in more than 50 countries. Plus, we are forging more collaboration to create global standards. Lisa Pratz with BOMA has been working with the Royal Charter of Surveyors and other groups on the development of a global measurement standard. It's a big project, but there's terrific commitment and collaboration to make this happen. BOMA recently completed a global tenant study that included South Africa. BOMA's Lisa Pratz will tell you more about this shortly in the Global Office Market Trends session, along with BOMA International's Regional Committee Chair, Peter Merritt, on employing customer service tactics to improve tenant satisfaction. And so finally, I want to thank you all for having me. It is not only a wonderful opportunity to present, but it's also been a fantastic knowledge exchange. BOMA President Henry Chamberlain, along with Chair Ray Mackey, attended this conference 2 years ago. They brought back with them enthusiasm about the friends and colleagues they met and best practices that couldn't wait to put in place in the U.S. Well, now it's my chance. The atmosphere and synergy over these last 2.5 days of this conference have been invigorating. And now I get to steal some great ideas from you and take them back myself. Although this presentation is a bit US-centric, we're excited about how our partnership with so many of you help guide and drive high performance around sustainability and operational excellence. We are learning new models from you that we can use in the US, and I look forward to the continued global dialogue. Thank you all very much for your time.